So thank you so much for making it. It's an unusual event given the format. We will first do the first part here with our three presenters and maybe some time for questions and conversation, and then we will go down to the third floor, the main floor of the library, where the photographs have just been mounted by Susan and myself and our chief librarian, John. So it's a great honor to have this Ukrainian themed event in our series soon after Vladimir Rafeenko, the Ukrainian author who read from his two books in this same room a few weeks ago. Our three, should I say, guests or locals, or both, are Professor of History from the College of Staten Island, Susan Smith-Peter, who is really the person behind this exhibit and made it all happen and brought the prints here to Hunter just a few hours earlier today. Our second speaker is Maria Genkin from Razum for Ukraine. So Masha, welcome back, because Masha was also here at the Rafeenko event as an interpreter. And our own Hunter College student, psychology and history double major, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, Ren Chalpin, who is going to talk about her experiences of being a volunteer in Ukraine and on the border in the spring and the summer. But she will speak about this on her own. So we will have these three presentations, very brief and kind of semi-formal, and then we will have at least an hour, I think, in this room for Q&A, and then go downstairs. And of course, we can continue, except we will have to be quiet because the students are studying in the library. All right, thank you once again. Welcome to Hunter, those who have not been here before in the series, and thanks for making it happen.
Okay. Thank you. And also I want to thank Yasha for his hospitality and the wonderful experience that I've had here. John Pell, the librarian, was really great. And when you see the posters, you'll see what a wonderful setting these display cases are. And so it's been great. I'm glad to be here and to have all of you here and to be able to share this with you. So I want to tell you a little bit about this poster series, Report from Kyiv, how it came to be. So let's start with the National Museum of the History of Ukraine in the Second World War. So these posters are from this museum, which I'll just call the World War II Museum for short. It's a really large museum in every sense. It was established in 1981, 25 acres, a hill overlooking Kyiv. It's famous for its motherland statue, which you can see there. That is, something that's visible from a wide area, and it's been pretty well lauded for the things that they have been doing. This was a wonderful New York Times article, really a incredibly powerful and positive sort of profile of the museum and also the museum's director. And in this article, it talks about how during the battle for Kyiv, there was this process where nearly everybody left, and those that stayed created this new exhibit. And the exhibit was, it is still called Crucified Ukraine. And the director, Yuri Savchuk, he just was tremendously dedicated to the exhibit. He slept in the museum. There were only 5 people who put together this exhibit, which is really quite impressive and got a rave review in the Times and other places. So it is a fascinating museum. Unfortunately, I have not been able to see it, but I hope to get there once the war is over. So one of the things that the museum decided to do is they've decided to have a traveling exhibit because Crucified Ukraine is telling the story of the war. It's telling the story of the war through artifacts, and the curator, Yuri Savchuk, is constantly traveling through the country. So every time I get a WhatsApp message from him, he'll be like, you know, I'm in Kherson, or I'm in, you know, he'll be in the formerly occupied territories, and so he's out there collecting these materials. But in addition to that, they wanted to have a traveling exhibit that would tell people around the whole world the story of the Battle of Kyiv, and more broadly, the story of the incredible courage and resilience of the Ukrainian people. So their idea was to create this Kyiv one-day report traveling exhibit. And already in the very first month of the invasion, the museum created this, this traveling exhibit. And Elena Shobokapilis was the photographer who documented Kyiv. She chose the date of March 8th and just went all around Kyiv, seeing what was going on, just documenting a wide range of activities. And there were a tremendous number of photographs, as you can imagine, and the museum sort of boiled them down to the ones that they chose, and then we further boiled them down to these that are done here. It was first presented, as you can see, at the World Center for Peace, Liberty, and Human Rights in Verdun, France, and you can see the posters there at the bottom with the Ukrainian colors. So other countries, France, as we saw, South Korea, Germany, Montenegro, Sweden, Turkey, Poland, Slovakia, Czech Republic, and Lithuania. Here we see a photograph of the exhibit in Sweden, and then through Michael Andrek of the Ukrainian History and Education Center, who is back here, thank you, Mike, I met Yuri Savchuk. And so let me introduce myself, a little belatedly, but I'm a historian of Russia who's decided to stand with Ukraine and do what I can. And so this has been part of the work that I've been doing. I've also been working on, decolonizing the field of Russian history. And I brought in ThoughtMatter, a leading design firm who generously designed the posters for free. Is anybody here from ThoughtMatter? No? Well, I'm very much grateful for them because, as you'll see, the posters look just fantastic. So the event is going to run through April. I want to especially thank Yasha, who has been so important here for what he has done for bringing this in, and also John Pell, the librarian at Hunter College, who, the three of us together, we actually hung the posters. It was a great experience. I want to thank the Shevchenko Scientific Society. Their sponsorship of the posters was very welcome. Razum for Ukraine. They also sponsored this event, and the Ukrainian History and Education Center, and that again is Mike from that institution. They're a wonderful institution, and I just want to thank all of our sponsors and everyone for spreading the word and letting people know. And that's pretty much all I have to say, but thank you very much. It gives you a brief overview of the larger context, and I'd be glad to take questions afterwards. Thanks.
So, and this is our occasional chance really to learn more about Razum for Ukraine that has been in New York since 2014, and that's done probably more than many organizations in this current circumstances. So, Masha, thank you.
Thank you, Yash, and thank you for mentioning the event we had here several weeks ago now, because that was also kind of a Razum project, and we can talk about it more. And Susan and I and Yasha were just all at the conference, so this was the first time I met Susan. Thank you for inviting me over to speak today, Susan. And the conference was actually kind of the former Slavic conference, but I'm so glad Susan said about that, the colonizing Russian studies, because there were a lot of talks about how to do it and what is important at the conference. And I'm very interested in that, even though like this is not what I'm going to talk about today. So today I'm here. I thought, what can I really talk to you about? You're going to see the posters, they're going to be impactful. But I want to talk about Razum, and not because like I want to talk about the organization I represent. Of course I do, and of course I would like you to know about it. But the reason I think it's a good case of how Ukrainians come together, organize, all over the world really, but including in Ukraine. And we did it here in the United States. We're your local organization in New York. That's really a global organization, but like most of our offices here, the headquarters is here. So I can talk about how we did it, but I think it's going to be pretty representative about how Ukrainians and non-Ukrainians all around the world came to support this country in this conflict. So Razum for Ukraine. Razum means Ukrainian. Razum means together in Ukrainian, right? So together is not just a world that kind of is nice and warm. It's really the way we do things. We collaborate and we work all together. So it really describes well, where we're coming from. We started in 2014 with the Maidan revolution, when several Ukrainians in New York decided to go. They need to organize, they need to go protest, in front of the Russian consulate and so on and so forth. And this was the start of the organization that kind of grew over 9 years to be a nice mid-sized, small to mid-sized, NGO. We raised about $200,000 a year. It's a fairly small amount. We did a lot of projects, including what I like to do is literary projects, which is why I always collaborate with Yasha and bring all the Ukrainian writers for him to bring to Hunter. But really, the way the organization worked is anybody that had an idea would come to Razum and say, I want to do this, and we would say, great, let's fundraise for this and let's try to organize it together. So we had some impact in New York, but we were really part of like a New York community, not raising a ton of money and still very young. So what happened to us in February was a bit unexpected to us, but if you think about it, it was really meant to be. Like we raised at this point over $65 million. We deployed over $45 million. How did it happen, you may ask? This is, organization that went from 200K to 65 million. Well, it's because we actually started early. So we, over the 9 years, developed relationship with many organizations in Ukraine. So we didn't just organize in New York, we had partners in Ukraine. And one of our partners was a veteran organization, female veteran organization. There were female veterans of war that started in 2014. They were not recognized as combatants because the Soviet army didn't have combatants. And there were all these women that went from Maidan to the army and started fighting, and they were all written as a cook or a medic, because you could not be a combatant and to be in Ukrainian army. So they did this whole advocacy campaign, and we helped them advocate in the United States, and they have a movie that we showed in the United States. That was part of our kind of advocacy outreach. And a lot of these women were actually medics, and they came to us in early February and said, what we're seeing is the lack of the knowledge about tactical medicine, and actually the lack of tactical medicine. So Ukraine is kind of getting all these civilians to join the territorial defense forces. That's before Russia even invaded, but kind of like the thought was it's not going to invade, but let's actually get some people enrolled, and kind of the process started. But these people don't know how to apply tourniquets. These people don't understand what's going to happen if people are bleeding, if the bombs are going off. They have no idea what real war is like. Let's fundraise the money, let's buy the tactical medical equipment, and let's train the medics that are enrolling in the army to be medical, the army medics. So we started some fundraisers. Our thought was, well, if we are lucky, we're gonna raise maybe 200,000 and buy maybe like 20 backpacks and train, the medics in different areas. We really did not have huge plans. As soon as Russia invaded we realized we have a lot more money than we thought we would have, because really the outpouring of support from all over the world was incredible. We had money coming in from Hong Kong, from Taiwan, from Europe. Like, it was not just an American effort. And we also had a lot of the donors that started calling us and saying, here's a check, I hear you're already doing it. So we had the infrastructure in place to do it, and then a lot of volunteers came in. So all the former board members, all the Razan people that kind of were in and out of Razan came over. And within a couple of weeks, we had hundreds of people basically working on this procurement effort, buying, the tactical medical equipment, sending it to Ukraine, figuring out how the logistics works, which wasn't easy. Like, we were not, none of us worked in logistics before. We had to build up, find warehouses in Lviv, ship the things there. One of our board members went to Lviv and started receiving all these things. So to make the long story short, we've actually managed to order 400,000 tourniquets. And the tourniquet essentially saves human life, because that stops the bleeding if there's a very severe bleeding after the person is shot, or there's explosion or something like that. So 400,000 tourniquets could turn into 400,000 saved lives. It could be 200,000 saved lives. It's hard to quantify, but it's a lot of lives that you can save with just stopping the bleeding. Our volunteers came together, and we have, I think, 300 active people that for a long time were packing what we called IFAKs, individual first aid kits. It was a warehouse in New Jersey. They would come several times a week, and they packed 95,000 individual first aid units that are still kind of being shipped to Ukraine and distributed. It's kind of in the process. So the needs started changing, and if you know anything about the situation in Ukraine right now, the recent months was very difficult because Russia started bombing the infrastructure. The electricity started to go out. Ukraine actually has plenty of electricity. It usually exports the electricity because there are several atomic stations. There was a hydroelectric stations. Now Ukraine is actually like, I have a cousin in Kyiv who doesn't have electricity for most of the day. It gets like turned on for like 2 hours, and they have to like manage to plug in all their equipment and charge it and so forth. So the need changed. People started asking for generators because you need to be able to at least charge your phone and start the water pipe, because there is no water if there is no electricity, because guess what? All the water piping equipment requires electricity, and for that you need at least a generator. So right now we're seeing a lot of asks for generators, for power banks, because when you have electricity, power bank is like this big battery you can charge, your equipment in. And also, the heaters, because the hospitals need the generators and the heaters and so on and so forth. So this is sort of like what the effort actually shifted from the ThoughtMatter to this within the last couple of weeks because of what Russia is doing. And I think Razan kind of comes together very efficiently to react to the changing needs and to procure what's needed right now. So as a new organization without much bureaucracy, we're able to do it. But in addition to all of that, we were looking at what else is needed, and we realized that there are like the need for two things. One is advocating on behalf of Ukraine, because much as no matter how much money we're going to raise as a nonprofit, we're still not going to be able to get Ukraine guns and arms. And in reality, this war cannot be won if the Ukrainian army is left with nothing. So we need to advocate for Ukraine, and the team was created that went to Washington and essentially started meeting with politicians and bringing constituents from all over the country to show our American politicians that American people overall care about Ukraine. And you can see it in all the polls, but in reality you also need to actually bring the people from California to the Californian representatives to make it, it's incredible how much it actually matters that the person calls or the person writes to the politician or they show up in their office. Like, we're really living in a democracy where that can change the vote on the matter. So we started doing that, and in addition we realized that what we really care about is empowering Ukrainian NGOs, because that's a civil society that's going to take care of Ukraine in the future. That's a civil society that's going to make sure that the money is not stolen away when the reconstruction comes. You really need to empower kind of good players, and there were a lot of good players. People really came together in Ukraine to do, and I'm hoping we can hear more from it from Brand, who was actually on the ground volunteering. But amazing people started essentially volunteering. All these incredible entrepreneurs that had their taxi companies. They were like, the Kharkiv is getting bombed. I need to turn my taxi company around and start evacuating people using the cars. Or they saw the potential that if the car is already going to some area, it can deliver humanitarian aid in that area. They were changing the CRM systems. The report we get from these people shows the picture of every single grandmother that got a packet of food. Like, it's that detailed because they're so tech savvy and they can really account for that. And at this point, we're supporting about 100 different NGOs in Ukraine. They're all very small, relatively small. They're all kind of started as like a couple of friends, just basically delivering food and evacuating people. But we really believe in Ukrainian civil society, and Ukrainian civil society is a force to be reckoned with. It's much more powerful than journalists. It's really kind of the it's the future of Ukraine. It's young people who are very, very impressive. So, what's next? I think, the one moment I want to say is that what impresses me, and I haven't lived in Ukraine for 27 years at this point, even though I was born there, and I lived there for 21st years of my life. What impresses me is the resilience of people and how much they take all of this with stride. So, for example, during the last bombing, I was on a call with my team, and one of them was in the bathroom making jokes that she has to stay in the bathroom for 4 hours, and another one just disappeared because they were actually, something in infrastructure in Kyiv got bombed, so he lost internet. So here we are sitting in this meeting, and in a couple of hours, I started getting messages, wow, the sky is just incredible tonight. Because, you don't have no lights, so the sky, they can see the whole Milky Way, and like, we are like Western people, we don't see Milky Way anymore. We forgot like how beautiful it was, right? So there were all these people enjoying the night sky on the day when their infrastructure got bombed, and like people were like excited about the candles, all over the place. So there's so much positivity and so much joy and so much humor in all of that, that honestly I can't see how Ukraine can lose, because there's just really a lot of positive energy, and all the people are working towards a single goal. So I hope Ran is going to tell us more about her experience. I thank you very much for coming today and for hopefully seeing a wonderful exhibit downstairs. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ren. First, a little disclaimer: I woke up on the wrong side of the language today, so my English might be a little bit wavery. So I'm a student here at Hunter, psychology and history major. I'm originally born and raised in Switzerland. Just came to New York to study. When the war started, I was here studying, and I didn't quite know what to make it at first. It was very unreal, but immediately I knew I had to do something as much as I was able to. As a student, I don't have responsibilities, I don't have a family to take care of, or even pets. I'm physically able, so there was really no reason for me not to go to Ukraine as soon as I was able, which was mid-April. I went twice. The first time was from mid-April to the beginning of June, and then I went home because my nephew was being born. And then from beginning of July to mid-August, these 2 times I went with, they could barely be called NGOs. They were really also a group of friends who just put a name on themselves. The first time around was with an organization that they called Ukraine We're Here. It was originally based in Sweden and Norway. It was a joint effort. And then we had people from Germany come in. We had a girl from Russia come in, Germany, Bulgaria, France. And none of us knew each other, mostly. When we just all came, none of us were medics. None of us had prior wartime field experience or anything. We just had the motivation to work together, and with the help of 2 ambulances that were donated by Sweden and Norway, old ambulances, they still work. They were just old-fashioned. We drove every day from Poland to anywhere in Ukraine where we were needed. We would bring medical supply, food, hygiene supply, clothes, and usually would bring refugees back out and into Poland. So originally we tried to stay the night in Poland because we didn't know what to expect yet. Lviv was still getting bombed as well. And the border crossing is a complete hassle. But eventually we decided, well, we can't do as much as we can if we don't go further east, further south. So we ended up going really everywhere, just driving 14 hours a day. And we met the most amazing people. The Ukrainians are just, they're absolutely great. Like you were saying, it's their humor is just unbreakable. Even the soldiers, whenever there's so many checkpoints, of course, I've got to cross. With the ambulance, it's much easier. But the soldiers are always, they're always smiling to start with, and they're always grateful to see foreigners come to their country to help. And they have the greatest jokes. They decorate their checkpoints with, let's say, crude jokes at the expense of Putin and the Russian soldiers. I have to say, I think my favorite is a tombstone, like an actual beautiful tombstone that was engraved with Putin's face on it. It was absolutely gorgeous. We're not allowed to take pictures, of course. Sorry. The second time around, I went with a girl I had never met. That somebody told me that they knew somebody who knew somebody. Kind of went into a chain like this. She worked with You Animals, which is a great organization in Ukraine who works to help animals. And so we also travel all across Ukraine to evacuate animals because they're usually the forgotten victims of war. And once again, usually it was the soldiers who rescued the animals as well, which is very heartwarming to see. Like you see all these pictures on the internet of soldiers carrying cats, dogs, all sorts of animals, but it's actually like that. You see them just welcome this little animal into their war-torn lives, and it's absolutely beautiful. Yeah, so those were the heartwarming times, but there are of course other times that were absolutely heartbreaking when we would do evacuations at the train stations in Lviv or Kyiv, and we saw children who missing limbs, something that's not supposed to be, or old people who would die on the way over. Sorry. But still, everybody worked together to bring them as safely as possible somewhere where they could meet their families or friends or just another organization. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's just yeah, there's so many people from countries that you wouldn't expect to just show up in a war zone where you have rockets flying over your heads and you have to drive through a minefield, and people are just making jokes, and they say, well, someone has to do it, and it's unfair that we get to sit safely at home watching this on the TV and being able to turn it off. Meanwhile, all these Ukrainians are just, well, they can't just turn it off. So that's what motivates us, and I hope that it, letting you know that anybody can volunteer. I hope it inspires someone also.
Thank you so much, Ron. Would you mind if you just try any questions that you would like to take? And of course, this is from myself. Of course, this what Rand was just saying. This is how it happens at Hunter. I mean, we just met a week ago, very randomly. There is a Ukrainian club